I wasn't supposed to survive the winter, but the night I found blood in the snow and pulled a dying wolf from the ice, two kings decided I belonged to them. And now, they won't let anyone touch what's theirs. The cabin smelled like pine and old smoke. I stood at the kitchen window, arms crossed over my chest, watching the snow fall in thick, silent sheets. It was the kind of cold that bit through your skin and settled in your bones, the kind that made you wonder if spring was just a myth people told themselves to survive. My son Eli was asleep in the next room, 3 years old, stubborn as hell, and the only reason I was still breathing. I wasn't supposed to be here. Mute Omegas don't get happy endings. We get sold, forgotten, or worse marked by alphas who don't care if we can scream or not. So I ran. 2 years ago, I packed a bag, stole a car, and drove until the roads turned to gravel and the gravel turned to dirt. I found this place, a cabin buried deep in the woods of northern Colorado, and I stayed. No pack, no alpha, no rules. Just me, Eli, and the kind of silence that used to scare me, but now felt like safety. I exhaled slowly, my breath fogging the glass. The forest was endless, dark, beautiful in a way that made you feel small. And tonight, something in it was dying. I pulled my jacket tighter and stepped outside. The cold hit me like a fist. My boots crunched through the snow, each step sinking deeper than the last. I shouldn't have been out here. I should have locked the door, checked on Eli, and gone to bed. But I smelled it. Blood. Sharp. Metallic. Close. And beneath it, something else. Something that made my skin prickle and my instincts scream run. Alpha. I froze. Alphas didn't come out here. This far into the mountains, there was nothing, no prey, no territory worth claiming, just endless trees and snow that swallowed sound. So why the hell was one bleeding out in my woods? I should have turned around. I should have walked back inside, locked the door, and pretended I didn't notice. But I didn't, because I'm an idiot. Or maybe because I knew what it felt like to be left for dead. I followed the scent. It led me through the trees, past the frozen creek, into a clearing I'd never seen before, and there collapsed in the snow, half buried in red-stained white, was a wolf. Not a wolf. An alpha wolf. Massive. Black fur matted with blood. One leg twisted at an angle that made my stomach turn. His breathing was shallow, rattling in his chest like broken glass. He was dying, and he was staring right at me. Golden eyes, sharp, aware, predator eyes. I should have run. Instead, I knelt down. "Hey," I whispered or tried to. My voice didn't work. It never did. But I pressed my hand to his side anyway, feeling the heat of him, even through the blood-soaked fur. He growled. Low, threatening. I didn't move, because I'd seen that look before, in the mirror, in Eli's eyes when he woke up from nightmares. It wasn't anger, it was fear. "I'm not going to hurt you," I signed, knowing he couldn't understand, but my hands moved anyway, instinct overriding logic. "Just don't die yet, okay?" The wolf's eyes narrowed. Then, agonizing, he stopped growling. I took that as permission. Getting him back to the cabin was hell. He was too heavy, too big. And every time I tried to move him, he snarled like I was trying to tear him apart instead of save his life. But I didn't stop. I dragged him through the snow, inch by inch, my arms screaming, my lungs burning. By the time I got him inside, my hands were numb, and my jacket was soaked through with blood, his and mine. I kicked the door shut and collapsed against it, gasping for air. The wolf lay on the floor, chest heaving, eyes half closed. He looked worse in the light, deep gashes across his ribs, fur torn away in jagged strips. And his leg god, His leg was definitely broken. I didn't know how to fix this. I wasn't a healer. I wasn't a medic. I was just a mute Omega with a kid and a cabin in the middle of nowhere. But I couldn't let him die. Not when I'd already pulled him this far. I grabbed the first aid kit from under the sink and knelt beside him. "Okay," I signed, even though it was pointless. "This is going to suck." He didn't respond. I started with the blood. There was so much of it. I worked carefully, wiping away the worst of it with a wet towel, exposing the gashes beneath. They were deep, too deep, but they weren't bleeding as much now, which meant either he was healing alphas did, that he was too far gone to bleed anymore. I pressed gauze to the worst of the wounds and wrapped them tight. The wolf's breathing slowed. His eyes opened. And this time, when he looked at me, there was something different in his gaze, something that made my pulse stutter. Recognition. I sat back on my heels, hands shaking, blood drying on my skin. The wolf's golden eyes didn't leave mine. And for the first time since I'd found him, I wondered, who the hell was he? And why did it feel like he already knew me? His gaze held mine for another heartbeat. Then two. Then his eyes slid shut, and his massive body went limp. Panic shot through me. I pressed my palm to his chest, feeling for movement. His heartbeat was there, slow but steady, still alive. I exhaled hard, slumping forward until my forehead nearly touched his blood-stained fur. Idiot. You absolute idiot. What was I thinking? Dragging a half-dead alpha wolf into my house? Into Eli's house? I pushed myself up and wiped my hands on my jeans, smearing red across the denim. My fingers were trembling. Not from cold, from adrenaline, from the sheer stupidity of what I'd just done. But I couldn't leave him out there. I couldn't. I glanced toward the hallway. Eli's room. The door was still closed. No sound. He was a heavy sleeper, thank God. The last thing I needed was my 3-year-old wandering out here and finding a massive predator bleeding all over our floor. I looked back at the wolf. He was breathing easier now. The tension in his body had loosened, like sleep had finally dragged him under. Good. That gave me time to figure out what the hell I was going to do when he woke up. I stood, legs shaky, and moved to the sink, turned the faucet on, watched the water run pink as I scrubbed the blood off my hands. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window above the sink. Pale, thin, dark circles under my eyes that had been there so long I'd stopped noticing them. I looked exactly like what I was, a runaway Omega, barely surviving in the middle of nowhere. And now I had an alpha in my house. Perfect. I dried my hands and turned back around. The wolf hadn't moved, but the air had changed. It was heavier now, warmer, like the cabin had shrunk in the last 30 seconds. I frowned, stepping closer, and then I smelled it. Oh no, alpha pheromones. Thick, rich, rolling off him in waves that made my knees go weak and my stomach flip in a way I absolutely hated. I clenched my jaw and took a step back. No, nope, not happening. I'd spent 2 years building up immunity to this exact feeling. 2 years keeping my instincts locked down so tight they couldn't betray me. And this random bleeding wolf was not going to undo all that work just by existing on my floor. I crossed my arms over my chest and glared at him. "You better not be doing this on purpose," I muttered silently, uselessly, because my voice didn't work, and he was unconscious anyway. But it felt good to glare. His scent curled around me anyway, warm and infuriatingly comforting, like a blanket I didn't ask for, but my body wanted to sink into. I hated it. I hated that my Omega instincts were this easy to trigger, that all it took was one injured alpha, and suddenly my brain was whispering things like safe and protect and close. I shook my head hard, like I could physically dislodge the thoughts. Focus. He was hurt. That's all. His pheromones were spiking because his body was in survival mode. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. I grabbed a blanket from the couch and threw it over him, partly to keep him warm, partly so I didn't have to keep looking at the gashes across his ribs. Then I sat down on the floor, a few feet away, legs crossed, and watched him breathe. In, out, in, out. Steady now. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt something else. Curiosity maybe, or dread, because alphas didn't just collapse in the woods for no reason. And they definitely didn't look at you like that they were trying to memorize your face before the lights went out. Who are you? I signed to the empty room, my hands moving slow and deliberate, even though no one was watching. The wolf didn't answer, obviously, but his ear twitched. Just once. I froze. His eyes were still closed. His breathing hadn't changed, but that ear had definitely moved. You better not be faking, I signed, narrowing my eyes at him. Nothing. I waited. Still nothing. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding and leaned back against the wall. Maybe I was imagining things. Blood loss did that to people, made them paranoid, or maybe I was just exhausted. Yeah, that was probably it. I let my head fall back against the wood, eyes drifting shut for just a second. Just 1 second. That's when I felt it. A shift in the air, not a sound, not movement, just presence. My eyes snapped open. The wolf was still lying there, motionless under the blanket. But his eyes were open now, wide, golden, fixed directly on me. And this time, there was no mistaking it. He was awake. My pulse kicked up. Hey, I signed quickly, hands fumbling a little. You're okay. You're safe. I'm not. He growled. Low, deep. The kind of sound that rattled in your chest and made every instinct scream, run. But I didn't. I stayed exactly where I was, hands frozen mid-sign, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat, because running would make me prey. And I wasn't prey, not anymore. I helped you, I signed slowly, forcing my hands to stay steady. You were dying. I brought you here. I saved you. His growl didn't stop, but his eyes, those sharp, predatory eyes, flicked down to my hands, watching. He was watching my hands. I blinked. Wait. Can you understand me? I signed, slower this time, deliberate. The growl cut off. Silence. Then, impossibly, the wolf's head tilted, just slightly, like he was confused or surprised. I swallowed hard. You can understand me? It wasn't a question this time. The wolf didn't move, but his gaze, steady, unblinking, told me everything I needed to know. He understood, and that changed everything. Because wolves didn't understand sign language, but alphas in wolf form? That was a different story. I leaned forward slightly, heart pounding, hands already moving before I could stop them. Who are you? The wolf's eyes narrowed, and then with a slowness that made my skin prickle, his lips pulled back. Not in a snarl, in something worse. A smile, not in a snarl, in something worse. A smile. My stomach dropped. Oh, hell no. I scrambled to my feet, putting the couch between us, like that would somehow help if he decided to lunge. The wolf didn't move, just kept watching me with those unnerving golden eyes, lips still pulled back in that disturbingly human expression. You think this is funny? I signed, hands sharp and aggressive. You think scaring the guy who saved your life is entertaining? His tail flicked. Once, like a cat. I stared at him. Are you messing with me right now? The wolf's eyes glinted. And then slowly, deliberately, he lowered his head onto his paws and closed his eyes, like I was boring him. Oh, you did not just... A soft creak from the hallway froze me mid-sign. My head whipped toward the sound. Eli's door. No. No, no, no. I bolted across the room, nearly tripping over the first aid kit, and slid to a stop in front of the hallway just as the door cracked open. A tiny face peeked out, messy brown hair, sleepy eyes, clutching his stuffed rabbit like it was a shield. Eli, I signed quickly, crouching down to his level. What are you doing up, baby? He rubbed his eyes with one small fist, then pointed toward the living room. Scared. His little hands moved slowly, uncertain. Heard something. My heart squeezed. Of course he did. The growling, the noise. He probably woke up terrified. It's okay, I signed, brushing his hair back from his forehead. Everything's fine. Just a branch fell on the roof. From the snow. Nothing scary. Eli's eyes narrowed. He didn't believe me. Smart kid. He leaned to the side, trying to see past me into the living room. I shifted, blocking his view. Bed, I signed firmly. Now, it's late. But, bed, he pouted, full bottom lip out, eyes wide, the face that usually got him whatever he wanted. Not tonight. I pointed back toward his room. He huffed, a tiny sound of frustration, then turned and shuffled back inside, dragging his rabbit behind him. I waited until the door clicked shut. Then I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Close. Too close. I turned back around. The wolf was sitting up now, not lying down anymore, sitting, like a person, watching the hallway where Eli had just been. My blood went cold. Don't even think about it, I signed, stepping between him and the hallway. His eyes flicked to me. No aggression, no threat, just curiosity. That was almost worse. He's off limits, I signed, slow and sharp. You hear me? I don't care who you are or what you want. You don't go near him. The wolf tilted his head again. Then, impossibly, he dipped his head, like a nod. I blinked. Did you just... He stood, all at once, fluid and smooth, despite the bandages and the broken leg that should have kept him down. He was massive on all fours, bigger than I'd realized. His head came up to my chest, and his shoulders were broader than any wolf I'd ever seen. Not a wolf, an alpha, and he was standing in my living room like he owned it. Sit. Down. I signed, firm, authoritative, the way I used to talk to alphas back when I still lived in a pack and thought I had any control over my life. The wolf's ears flicked forward. Then he sat, slowly, like he was humoring me. I hated that he was listening, but only because he chose to. Good, I signed, even though my hands were shaking. Stay. He stayed. For exactly 3 seconds. Then he stood again, limped past me, and collapsed onto the rug in front of the fireplace, like he'd been living here his whole life. I gaped at him. Are you kidding me right now? He yawned, wide, showing every single one of his very sharp, very large teeth. Then he rested his head on his paws and closed his eyes, dismissed. I stood there, fists clenched, jaw tight, trying very hard not to scream, because screaming wouldn't help. Screaming never helped. Fine, I signed to the empty room. Fine, you want to play house? Cool. But the second you try anything, I'm dragging your furry ass back into the snow. Got it? The wolf's ear twitched, but he didn't open his eyes. I glared at him for another 10 seconds. Then I grabbed a pillow off the couch, threw it at him, and stormed into the kitchen. The pillow bounced off his head. He didn't even flinch. I slammed the cabinet door harder than necessary and yanked out a mug. tea. I needed tea. Or whiskey. But I didn't have whiskey, so tea it was. I filled the kettle and set it on the stove, hands still trembling as I waited for the water to boil. This was insane. I had an alpha wolf in my house. A wolf who understood sign language, a wolf who smiled at me like he knew something I didn't, and I had no idea what to do about it. The kettle started to whistle. I poured the water over a tea bag and watched the steam curl into the air. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window again, tired, wired, out of my depth. "What are you doing?" I signed to myself, quiet and bitter. No answer, obviously. I took a sip of tea. Burned my tongue. Didn't care. Behind me, I heard the soft sound of claws clicking against wood. I turned. The wolf had moved. Not toward the hallway, not toward Eli, toward me. He stopped a few feet away, head low, eyes steady, not threatening, just there. "What?" I signed, sharper than I meant to. He didn't move, just kept looking at me with those impossibly intelligent eyes. And then, slowly, he lowered himself to the ground, not sitting, not standing, lying down, submitting. My breath caught. Wolves didn't do that. Not to omegas, especially not alphas. "Why?" I signed, the word barely more than a twitch of my fingers. He didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. And for the first time since I'd found him bleeding in the snow, I felt something other than fear. I felt confused, because alphas didn't submit. They took, they claimed, they controlled. So why was this one lying at my feet like I was the one in charge? I set the mug down on the counter, hands unsteady. "I don't understand you," I signed. The wolf's eyes softened, just a little. And somehow, that was worse than the smile, because it felt real. I swallowed hard and turned away. "Stay there," I signed without looking back. "I mean it." I walked to the couch, grabbed the blanket I'd thrown over him earlier, and wrapped it around my shoulders. Then I sat down and waited. For what? I didn't know. But the wolf didn't move. He just stayed there on the kitchen floor, watching me like he had all the time in the world, like he wasn't going anywhere. And that terrified me more than anything else. He wasn't threatening me. He was waiting for me to understand something. And I had no idea what. The silence stretched between us, thick and uncomfortable. I pulled the blanket tighter around my shoulders and stared at the ceiling, counting the wooden beams like they held answers. 1, 2, 3. The wolf was still watching me. I could feel it without looking. 4, 5, 6. His breathing was steady now, calm. Like he wasn't a predator lying 3 feet away from someone who couldn't even scream for help. 7, 8. My eyelids felt heavy, too heavy. I blinked hard, trying to focus, but exhaustion was winning. The adrenaline from earlier had burned off, leaving nothing but bone-deep fatigue. I shouldn't sleep. Not with him here, not with Eli down the hall. But my body didn't care what I should do. My eyes drifted shut, just for a second, just one. The cold woke me. Not the kind that crept in slowly, the kind that slammed into you all at once, sharp and biting. My eyes snapped open. The fire had gone out. The room was dark except for the pale moonlight filtering through the window, turning everything silver and shadowed. And it was freezing. I sat up fast, blanket falling off my shoulders, breath fogging in front of my face. How long was I out? I glanced at the fireplace. The embers were completely dead. Cold. Like they'd been out for hours. Damn it. I pushed myself off the couch, legs stiff and unsteady, and stumbled toward the woodpile by the door. Empty. Of course, I'd meant to restock yesterday and the day before that, but between keeping Eli entertained and hunting for food, I'd kept pushing it off. Now, I was paying for it. I looked toward the door. The woodshed was only 20 feet away. 30 seconds, maybe. Grab an armful, come back, restart the fire. Easy. Except it was the middle of the night, and freezing, and I had a massive wolf-shaped problem lying on my kitchen floor. I glanced over. He was still there, curled up now, nose tucked under his tail. Asleep, apparently. Good. I grabbed my jacket off the hook, shoved my arms into the sleeves, and opened the door as quietly as I could. The cold hit me like a punch. I sucked in a breath, ice burning my lungs, and stepped outside. The snow had stopped, but the world was still blanketed in white. Silent, beautiful, deadly if you stayed out too long. I kept my head down and walked fast, boots crunching through the fresh powder. The woodshed was exactly where I'd left it. Small, leaning slightly to one side, but functional. I yanked the door open and grabbed the first logs I could reach, stacking them against my chest. 1, 2, 3, 4. That should be enough. I turned to leave and froze. The wolf was standing in the doorway, not in the cabin, not on the kitchen floor where I'd left him. Here, blocking my path. Are you serious right now? I signed, juggling the logs awkwardly with one arm so I could free a hand. He didn't move, just stood there, golden eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, head tilted like he was asking a question. Get out of the way. Nothing. I huffed out a breath, irritation flaring hot despite the cold. Fine, we'll do this the hard way. I stepped forward. So did he, directly into my path. I stopped, logs digging into my ribs, jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. Move. He sat down, right there, in the doorway, like a furry, infuriating boulder. Are you kidding me? His tail wagged. Once, I stared at him, he stared back, and for a split second, I swore he looked smug. I hate you, I signed flatly. His ears perked up. I'm serious. I genuinely hate you. He yawned. I wanted to throw a log at his head. But that would mean dropping all of them, and I was not making 2 trips. Fine, I signed, shifting the wood higher against my chest. You win, but you're carrying these next time. I stepped around him, squeezing past his massive frame and out into the snow. He followed. Of course he did. I didn't look back, didn't acknowledge him, just marched straight toward the cabin, arms aching, breath coming in short, visible puffs. The door was still open. I'd been too rushed to close it. Stupid. I kicked it shut behind me the second I was inside, logs clattering onto the floor in a messy heap. The wolf slipped in right before the door closed. I glared at him. He wagged his tail again. You're the worst, I signed. Then I crouched down and started rebuilding the fire. It took longer than it should have. My hands were numb, fingers clumsy and uncooperative, but eventually I got the kindling lit and the flames started to catch. Warmth began to spread through the room. I sat back on my heels, flexing my fingers, watching the fire grow. Behind me, I heard the soft click of claws on wood. Then warmth, not from the fire, from him. The wolf had curled up right behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body, close enough that when I shifted, my back brushed against his side. I froze. What are you doing? He didn't answer, obviously, but he also didn't move. Just stayed there, solid and warm and impossibly close. I should have moved, should have stood up and put distance between us, but I didn't, because it was warm, and I was tired, and my body, traitorous thing that it was, leaned into the heat without permission. Just a little, just enough. The wolf's breathing evened out. Slow, deep, like he'd fallen asleep again. I closed my eyes. This is temporary, I told myself. Just until he heals. Then, he's gone. But even as I thought it, I knew it wasn't that simple. Because alphas didn't just leave. Not once they decided on something. Or someone. And the way he was lying there, curled around me like a shield, felt an awful lot like a decision. I swallowed hard. You're leaving as soon as you're healed. I signed to the fire, hands small and quiet. I don't care how warm you are. The wolf's tail thumped once against the floor, like a laugh. I glared at the flames. I mean it. Another thump. I gave up and let my head drop forward, exhaustion pulling me under again. The fire crackled softly. The cold stayed outside. And the wolf stayed exactly where he was. Warm, steady, unbothered. And for the first time in 2 years, I fell asleep, without checking the locks, without listening for footsteps, without fear. I hated that most of all, because it meant some part of me, buried deep and desperate, had already started to trust him. And that was the most dangerous thing I could do. The fire popped, sending sparks up into the chimney. I didn't move, neither did he. And outside, the snow began to fall again. Soft, silent, trapping us together. And outside, the snow began to fall again. Soft, silent, trapping us together. I woke to the sound of tiny footsteps, not the wolf, Eli. My eyes snapped open. The fire had burned down to glowing embers again, casting the room in dim orange light. The wolf was still behind me, his breathing deep and even. Still asleep. Good. I shifted carefully, trying not to wake him, and turned my head toward the hallway. Eli stood at the edge of the living room, clutching his rabbit, eyes wide and locked on the massive black wolf curled around me. Oh no. I sat up fast, too fast, and the wolf's head lifted immediately. Alert, awake. His golden eyes found Eli. Everything in me went cold. No, I signed sharply at the wolf, planting myself between them even though I was still sitting on the floor. Stay. The wolf's ears flicked forward, gaze fixed on my son. Eli took a step closer. No, no, no. Eli, stop. I signed frantically, pushing myself to my feet. Stay where you are, baby. Don't move. But Eli wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the wolf with the kind of fearless curiosity only a 3-year-old could manage. Big doggy, he signed, small hands clumsy, but clear. Not a dog, I signed back, stepping sideways to keep myself between them. Dangerous. Stay back. Eli's head tilted, then he smiled. And before I could stop him, he walked right past me, straight toward the wolf. Eli, no. I lunged forward, grabbing his arm and pulling him back against my chest. The wolf stood, slowly, deliberately. Every muscle in my body locked. My arms tightened around Eli, heart hammering so hard I could barely breathe. Please, I signed with one trembling hand, the other keeping Eli pinned to me. Don't. The wolf took a step forward. I took a step back. He stopped. His eyes shifted from Eli to me. Calm, steady, not hunting, watching. Mama's scared. Eli signed against my chest, small fingers pulling at my sleeve. I didn't correct him. Didn't tell him I wasn't his mama, just his dad. Now wasn't the time. Yes, I signed back, throat tight. Scared, so we stay back. Okay? Eli nodded. But he didn't stop staring at the wolf. And the wolf didn't stop staring at him. Then, impossibly, the wolf lowered his head. Not aggressive, not threatening, submissive. He sank down onto his belly, massive body pressed flat against the floor, and rested his chin on his paws, like he was making himself smaller. less dangerous. I blinked, arms still locked around Eli, brain struggling to process what I was seeing. "What are you doing?" I signed weakly. The wolf's tail moved, just once, a slow, careful wag. Eli wiggled in my arms. "Down," he signed. "Want to see?" "Absolutely not." "Please, Eli. Please, Mama." I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. This was insane. This was the worst parenting decision I'd ever made. But the wolf wasn't moving, wasn't growling, wasn't doing anything except lying there like the world's most patient predator. "Fine," I signed, loosening my grip just enough for Eli to slide down. "But you don't touch. You stay right next to me. Understand?" Eli nodded so fast, his hair bounced. I kept one hand on his shoulder as he crept forward, tiny steps, eyes huge. The wolf didn't move. Eli stopped a foot away, crouching down to the wolf's level. "Hi, doggy," he signed. The wolf's eyes softened, and then he did something I didn't expect. He huffed. Soft, quiet, like a greeting. Eli's face lit up. "He said hi," he signed excitedly, looking back at me. "He's not a pet," I signed, but my hands felt weak, uncertain. Because the wolf wasn't acting like a threat. He was acting like he knew Eli, like he'd been waiting for this. Eli reached out slowly, hand hovering inches from the wolf's nose. "Eli, don't." But the wolf moved first. He stretched his neck forward, just barely, and pressed his nose to Eli's palm. Gentle, careful. Eli giggled. The sound cracked something in my chest. "Soft," Eli signed with his free hand, the other still resting on the wolf's nose. The wolf closed his eyes, and for a moment, everything was still. No danger, no fear. Just a kid and a wolf and the quiet crackle of dying embers. I should have pulled Eli back, should have ended this before it went further. But I didn't, because I'd never seen my son smile like that. Not since we left. Eli pulled his hand back and turned to me, eyes shining. "He's nice, Mama. Can we keep him?" I almost laughed. Almost. "No, baby," I signed, voice silent but expression clear. "He's not ours to keep." "Why not?" "Because he belongs somewhere else." Eli frowned, looking back at the wolf. "Where?" "Good question." The wolf's eyes opened, locking onto mine, and for the first time, I saw something in them that made my stomach twist. Sadness, not physical pain, not exhaustion, loss. "I don't know," I signed honestly, dropping to one knee beside Eli. "But somewhere. He has people looking for him." Eli's face fell. "What if they don't find him?" "They will. But what if they don't?" I didn't have an answer for that. The wolf's gaze stayed on me, heavy and unreadable. "Then I guess he stays until they do," I signed quietly. Eli's smile came back, small but real. "Okay," he yawned, rubbing his eyes with one fist, and leaned against my leg. "Tired," he signed. "I know, baby. Let's get you back to bed." I scooped him up, settling him on my hip even though he was getting too big for it, and carried him back to his room. The wolf watched us go. I laid Eli down, tucked the blanket around him, and kissed his forehead. "Love you," I signed. "Love you too, Mama," he signed back, already half asleep. I stayed there for a moment, watching his chest rise and fall, making sure he was really out. Then I stood and walked back to the living room. The wolf was sitting now, waiting. "You're good with kids," I signed, stopping a few feet away. He tilted his head. "That's not a compliment," I added quickly. "It's an observation." His tail wagged again. I crossed my arms. "Who are you really?" I signed, slow and deliberate. "And why does it feel like you've been here before?" The wolf stood, and then right in front of me, his body started to shimmer. The air around him rippled, like heat waves over pavement. I stumbled back, heart lurching into my throat. What the hell? His form shifted. Bones cracked, fur receded, and within seconds, the wolf was gone. In his place stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, completely naked, and staring at me with the same golden eyes. "Hi," he said, voice rough and low. "I'm Grayson." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Obviously. He stepped forward, and I saw the bandages still wrapped around his ribs, the bruises, the exhaustion in his face. "And I think," he said quietly, eyes locked on mine, "you're my mate." The floor dropped out from under me. Not metaphorically. I actually stumbled, legs giving out, and hit the couch hard. He moved fast, catching my arm before I fell completely. "Easy," he murmured. I jerked away, scrambling to the far end of the couch, hands shaking so badly I could barely sign. "No," I signed. "Absolutely not." His jaw tightened. "I know this is—" "No," I signed again, sharper. "You don't get to do this. You don't get to show up half dead in my woods, let my son pet you, and then tell me we're mates. I didn't plan this. I don't care." His eyes flashed. Not anger. Something worse. Hurt. "You saved me," he said quietly. "Why?" I stared at him. "Because I'm an idiot." "No," he said. "Because you felt it too." "Felt what?" He stepped closer. "The bond." My breath hitched. Because deep down, buried under all the denial and fear, I knew. I'd felt it the second I touched him in the snow, and I hated him for it. He said we were mates, and I couldn't tell him he was wrong. Because the pull was there. Had been there since the moment I'd touched him in the snow. A thread I couldn't see, but could feel, tugging at something deep in my chest every time he looked at me. I hated it. "Put on some clothes," I signed, forcing my eyes to stay on his face and nowhere else. Grayson glanced down at himself, like he'd forgotten he was naked. "Right," he said. "Sorry." He didn't sound sorry. He crossed to the corner, where I'd piled his torn, blood-stained clothes earlier, and pulled on the pants. They were barely holding together, ripped at the thigh and stained dark, but at least they covered him. Mostly. I looked away anyway. "Better?" he asked. I didn't answer, just stood up and walked to the kitchen, needing distance, needing to think. This wasn't happening. I didn't get mates. I didn't get bonds. I got run, hide, and survive. That was it. I braced my hands on the counter, head down, breathing slow and measured. Behind me, I heard his footsteps, bare feet on wood, slow, careful. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said quietly. "I know," I signed, without turning around. "Then why won't you look at me?" Because if I looked at him, I'd have to admit this was real, that the bond wasn't just in my head, that some cosmic joke had decided now, after everything, was the right time to throw a mate at me. "You need to leave," I signed, finally turning to face him. He was closer than I expected, only a few feet away, close enough that I could see the faint silver scars along his collarbone, half hidden under the bandages, old wounds, older than the ones I'd patched up. "I can't," he said. "Yes, you can. Door's right there." "I won't." My jaw tightened. "Why not?" His eyes held mine, steady and unwavering. "Because you're in danger." I laughed. It came out bitter and soundless. "I've been in danger my whole life," I signed. "I'm still here." "Not like this." "What's that supposed to mean?" He hesitated, just for a second. Then he sighed and ran a hand through his hair, and I noticed how his fingers trembled slightly, still weak, still hurt. "There's another alpha," he said quietly. "My brother, Callum." We were tracking a rogue pack through these mountains when they ambushed us, split us up. I got the worst of it. But Callum, his voice tightened. He's still out there. And if he's hurt, if he can't shift, he won't survive the cold. My stomach dropped. Your brother's out there, right now. Yes. And you didn't think to mention this before I dragged you inside and wasted my supplies on you? You didn't exactly give me a chance to talk, he pointed out. Fair. I crossed my arms, mind racing. 2 alphas. Twin alphas, apparently, both in my woods, one bleeding on my floor, the other lost somewhere in the snow. This was bad. This was so bad. How long has he been out there? I signed. Since last night. I stared at him. Last night, that was hours ago. He could be… Don't, Grayson cut in, voice sharp. Don't say it. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and for the first time since he'd shifted, I saw real fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for his brother. I exhaled hard and grabbed my jacket off the hook. What are you doing? Grayson asked. What does it look like? I'm going to find him. No, you're not. I stopped, halfway into my sleeve, and turned to glare at him. Excuse me? It's too dangerous, he said. The rogues could still be out there. You're not going. Oh, I'm not. I signed, sharp and deliberate. Last time I checked, you don't get to tell me what to do. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need your protection. Yes, you do. Says who? Says the Bond. I threw my jacket at him. He caught it, frowning. The Bond, I signed slowly, making sure he understood every word. Doesn't get a vote. You want to find your brother? Fine. But I know these woods. You don't. So either I come with you, or you stumble around in the dark until you freeze to death. Your choice. Grayson's jaw worked, like he was physically biting back an argument. Good. Let him choke on it. You're stubborn, he muttered. And you're bossy, I signed back. We all have flaws. His lips twitched. Almost a smile. Almost. Fine, he said. But you stay close. And if I tell you to run, you run. Understood? I rolled my eyes and grabbed my jacket back. Sure. Whatever you say, Alpha. The way his eyes flashed at that word sent a shiver down my spine that I absolutely refused to acknowledge. We need to move fast, he said, already heading for the door. Callum's scent was northwest when we got separated. If he's still conscious, he'll try to find shelter. There's an old hunting cabin about 2 miles that direction, I signed. Abandoned. If he's smart, he'll head there. Grayson nodded, then paused at the door. What about your son? Eli stays here. He'll sleep for a few more hours. We'll be back before he wakes up. You sure? No, I signed honestly, but I don't have a choice. His expression softened. Thank you. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything. Just pulled the door open and stepped out into the cold. The snow had stopped again, leaving the world eerily quiet. Our breath hung in the air, visible and fleeting. Grayson moved beside me, limping slightly, but keeping pace. You should shift, I signed. You'll move faster. Can't, he said. Not yet. Use too much energy healing. I need a few more hours. Great. So we were doing this the hard way. I led us into the trees, following the path I'd memorized over 2 years of living here. The forest was dense, shadows layered on shadows, but the moonlight helped. Grayson stayed close, not hovering, just there. And despite everything, despite the cold and the danger and the sheer insanity of this situation, I didn't mind. Can I ask you something? He said after a few minutes of silence. I nodded. Why did you really save me? I kept walking, eyes on the snow ahead. Because I know what it's like, I signed, slow and careful, to be left behind. His hand brushed mine, just for a second, barely a touch, but it was enough to make my pulse stutter. "You weren't left behind," he said quietly. "You were surviving." I didn't respond, because he was right. But survival wasn't the same as living. And some part of me, the part I'd buried deep and tried to forget, wondered if maybe, just maybe, this bond was my chance to figure out the difference. We walked in silence after that, side by side, through the snow, through the dark, toward a brother I'd never met and a future I wasn't ready for. But for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't walking alone, and that terrified me more than anything. We were looking for his brother, but I had a feeling we were going to find something worse. The hunting cabin came into view through the trees, half buried in snow and shadow. The roof sagged in the middle, and one of the windows was broken, but it was still standing. Barely. Grayson stopped beside me, body tense, eyes locked on the dark doorway. "He's here," he said quietly. "How do you know?" "I can smell him." I couldn't smell anything except pine and cold, but I wasn't about to argue. Grayson moved forward, favoring his injured leg, and I followed close behind. The door hung crooked on its hinges. He pushed it open slowly, and it creaked loud enough to make me wince. Inside was dark, cold, empty except for a broken chair in the corner and snow drifting through the shattered window. No brother, no blood, nothing. "Callum," Grayson called, voice rough and strained. Silence. He stepped further inside, scanning the room like he could will his brother into existence. I stayed in the doorway, unease prickling along my spine. Something felt wrong, not dangerous, just off. "Grayson," I signed, trying to get his attention. He wasn't looking at me. His focus was locked on something in the corner. Half hidden, in shadow, a scrap of fabric, dark, torn. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and grabbed it, lifting it into the moonlight, filtering through the window. His whole body went rigid. "This is his," he said, voice hollow. "This is Callum's shirt." I moved closer, pulse quickening. The fabric was shredded, claw marks, and stained dark with something that looked an awful lot like blood. "Maybe he shifted," I signed quickly. "Maybe he had to leave it behind." "No." Grayson's hands tightened around the fabric, knuckles white. "He wouldn't leave this, not unless—" He cut himself off, jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. "Unless what?" I signed. He didn't answer, just dropped the shirt and turned toward the door, movements sharp and frantic. "We need to keep looking," he said. "He's close." "I know he is." "Grayson, wait." But he was already outside, scanning the snow, searching for tracks that weren't there. I followed him out, frustration and worry tangling in my chest. "Stop," I signed, planting myself in front of him. "You're hurt. You're exhausted. We need to go back. I'm not leaving without him. You don't even know where he is. I'll find him." "How? You can barely stand." His eyes flashed, and for a second, I saw the wolf behind them, wild, desperate. "He's my brother," Grayson said, voice breaking on the last word. "I can't just leave him out here." My chest ached. I knew that feeling, the helplessness, the guilt. I'd felt it every day since I ran. "I know," I signed softly, "but killing yourself won't help him." Grayson looked at me, really looked at me, and something in his expression cracked. "What if he's already dead?" he whispered. The words hung in the air, heavy and horrible. I stepped closer, close enough to touch, and lifted my hands slowly. "Then we'll find him anyway," I signed. "Together. But not like this." Not when you're about to collapse. His shoulders sagged, and for the first time since he'd shifted, he looked small, breakable. I can't lose him, he said quietly. You won't. You don't know that. No, I signed, but I know you won't find him if you pass out in the snow. So we go back, we rest, and we try again in a few hours. He stared at me for a long moment, conflict written all over his face. Then finally, he nodded. Okay. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Okay. We turned back toward the cabin, and that's when I saw it. Movement. Just beyond the tree line. A shadow that didn't belong. My blood went cold. Grayson. He followed my gaze, body going taut. The shadow stepped forward, and the moonlight caught on golden eyes. Not Grayson's eyes, someone else's. Callum, Grayson breathed. The figure didn't answer, just kept walking toward us, slow and deliberate, until the light finally revealed him. Tall, broad, identical to Grayson in every way except for the scar cutting through his left eyebrow and the cold, empty look in his eyes. Callum, Grayson said again, relief flooding his voice. Thank God, you thought I was dead? Callum's voice was flat, emotionless. Grayson hesitated. Yeah, I did. Callum's gaze slid past him, landed on me, and stayed there. I felt pinned, exposed, like he could see straight through me. Who's this? Callum asked. My mate, Grayson said without hesitation. I wanted to argue, wanted to sign, no, I'm not. But the words stuck somewhere between my brain and my hands, because Callum was still staring at me, and there was something in his eyes that made every instinct scream, run. Your mate, Callum repeated slowly. How convenient, Grayson frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means, Callum said, taking another step closer, that you found exactly what we came here for. My stomach dropped. Grayson, I signed quickly, hands shaking. Something's wrong. But Grayson wasn't looking at me. He was staring at his brother, confusion and hurt warring on his face. What are you talking about? Grayson asked. Callum smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. You really don't know, do you? Know what? Why we were sent here. Callum's gaze flicked back to me. We weren't tracking rogues, Gray. We were tracking him. The world tilted. No. That's not true, Grayson said, voice hard. We were following the pack. You said. I lied. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. Grayson took a step back, like the words had physically hit him. Why? He whispered. Because the council wants him, Callum said simply. And they sent us to bring him back. My hands moved before I could stop them. I'm not going back. Callum's eyes locked onto mine. You don't have a choice. Yes, I do. No, Callum said, voice cold and final. You really don't. Grayson moved between us, blocking Callum's line of sight. You're not taking him, he said, and his voice was all alpha now. Command. Power. Callum raised an eyebrow. You're going to fight me? Your own brother? If I have to. For an Omega you just met? For my mate. Callum laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound that made my skin crawl. You're pathetic, he said. The bond's already got you wrapped around his finger. It's not the bond, Grayson said quietly. It's him. Something flickered in Callum's expression. Too fast to read. Then it was gone, replaced by cold indifference. Fine, Callum said. Then you can watch when they come for him. Who's coming? I signed, dread pooling in my gut. Callum's smile widened. Everyone. And that's when I heard it. Footsteps, multiple, coming from every direction. Grayson heard it too. His body went rigid, head snapping toward the trees. Run, he said. I didn't move. Couldn't. Because the trees were full of shadows now, moving. Closing in. Alphas, at least 6 of them, all staring at me like I was prey. I said run, Grayson growled, but I couldn't, because Callum was blocking the only path back to the cabin, and the circle was getting tighter. Grayson shifted his weight, preparing to fight, even though he could barely stand. Don't, I signed desperately. You'll die. Then I die protecting you. My throat burned. Grayson, please. He looked back at me, eyes fierce and golden and full of something that hurt to see. I'm not losing you, he said. And then the first alpha lunged. Grayson met him head-on, and the forest erupted into chaos. I stumbled back, heart hammering, watching Grayson fight with everything he had, even though his body was screaming for him to stop. He was going to get himself killed. For me, no. Something inside me snapped, not broke, ignited. Heat flooded through my veins, sharp and electric, and the air around me shimmered. The alphas froze, all of them, even Grayson, because they could feel it, the power rolling off me in waves, crackling like lightning in the silence. I lifted my hands, and the world bent. Not physically, mentally. I could feel their minds, every single one, threads of thought and instinct, tangled and chaotic. And I pulled. Stop, I commanded, not with my voice, with my mind. And they stopped. Every alpha, every threat, frozen in place, eyes wide, bodies locked. Grayson stared at me, shock written all over his face. What? He breathed. What are you? I met his gaze, hands still raised, power still humming under my skin. I'm the reason they've been hunting me, I signed. And then everything went dark. I wasn't just an Omega. I was the one they'd been looking for all along. And then everything went dark. Not unconscious dark, power dark, the kind that swallowed light and sound and left nothing but the electric hum of my own pulse in my ears. I could still feel them, all of them, their minds pressed against mine like hands on glass, pushing, testing, trying to break through the hold I had on them. But they couldn't, because I was stronger. I'd always been stronger. That's why they wanted me. My knees buckled, and I hit the snow hard, gasping for air that felt too thin, too cold. The power flickered, just for a second. But it was enough. One of the alphas broke free. I felt it the moment his mind slipped through my grip, sharp and sudden like a snapped thread. He lunged. No! Grayson's voice cut through the haze, and then he was there, slamming into the alpha mid-leap, taking him down into the snow. They rolled, snarling and snapping, a blur of fists and fury. I tried to stand, tried to pull the alpha back with my mind, but my vision swam and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Too much. I'd used too much. Another thread snapped, then another. The alphas started moving again, slow at first, like they were waking from a dream. Then faster. No, no, no. I forced myself to my feet, legs trembling, and threw my hands out again. Stop, I commanded, pouring everything I had left into the word. The air crackled, and they froze again. All except Callum. He stood at the edge of the circle, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. Impressive, he said calmly. But you can't hold them forever. He was right. I could feel it already. The power draining out of me like water through a sieve. My heartbeat was too fast, my breathing shallow, and the edges of my vision were starting to blur. I had minutes, maybe less. Grayson shoved the alpha off him and staggered to his feet, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. We need to go, he said, voice rough. Now. I can't, I signed weakly. If I let go, they'll follow. Then don't let go until we're far enough away. I can't hold them that long. You don't have a choice. I wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this was impossible, but the look in his eyes stopped me. Not command, not control, trust. He trusted me, even though I'd just turned his entire world upside down, even though I'd lied by omission. Even though I was the reason his brother had betrayed him, he still trusted me. Idiot. I nodded. Grayson moved to my side, his hand finding mine, and the contact sent a jolt through me. Not romantic, not soft. Grounding. His warmth, his presence. It steadied the power, kept it from slipping through my fingers. Together, he said quietly. Together, I signed back. We ran, or tried to. Grayson was limping badly, and I was barely keeping my legs under me, but we moved as fast as we could through the snow, away from the frozen alphas, away from Callum's cold stare. Behind us, I felt the threads starting to fray. One by one, the alphas were breaking free. Faster, I signed frantically. I'm trying, Grayson gritted out. We made it maybe 50 feet before I heard the first snarl, then another. They were coming. Grayson, I know. We're not going to make it. Yes, we are. His grip on my hand tightened, and suddenly his body started to shimmer. What are you doing? I signed, panic spiking. Shifting, he said through clenched teeth. Get on my back. You said you couldn't shift yet. I lied. Before I could argue, his form blurred and twisted, and within seconds, the massive black wolf was back. He crouched low, golden eyes locking onto mine. Get on. I didn't hesitate. I scrambled onto his back, fingers digging into his fur, and he took off. Fast. Faster than any human could run. Faster than I thought possible given how hurt he was. The wind bit at my face, and the trees blurred past us in streaks of black and white. Behind us, I heard the alphas giving chase, but Grayson was faster. We burst through the tree line and into the clearing, where my cabin sat, small and dark and impossibly far away. Eli, I signed desperately, even though Grayson couldn't see my hands, but he understood. He ran harder. We hit the porch, and I slid off his back, nearly falling in my haste to get inside. The door was still unlocked. Stupid. So stupid. I shoved it open and stumbled inside, Grayson right behind me. Eli, I signed, running down the hallway. His door was closed, exactly how I'd left it. I threw it open. He was still asleep. Curled up under his blanket, rabbit clutched to his chest, completely oblivious to the chaos outside. Relief hit me so hard, I almost collapsed. Grayson appeared in the doorway, human again, breathing hard. We need to go, he said. Now, they're right behind us. Go where? I signed. There's nowhere left to run. Then we fight. You can barely stand. I don't care. I do. The words came out sharper than I meant them to, and Grayson flinched, but I didn't take them back, because it was true. I cared. About him. About Eli. About this fragile, impossible thing we'd stumbled into. And I wasn't going to let it end like this. I turned back to Eli, scooped him up carefully, and held him against my chest. He stirred slightly, but didn't wake. We protect him, I signed, looking at Grayson. No matter what. Grayson's expression softened. Always, he said. A howl split the night. Close. Too close. Grayson moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. They're here, he said quietly. My heart hammered. How many? All of them. I held Eli tighter. This was it. The moment I'd been running from for 2 years. The moment I'd always known would come. Grayson turned away from the window and crossed to me, his hand cupping my face gently. Whatever happens, he said, I need you to know something. I met his eyes. The bond, he continued, voice raw. It's not why I'm staying. It's not why I'm fighting. I'm doing this because you're worth fighting for. Both of you. My throat burned. You don't even know me, I signed. I know enough. That's not how this works. Then tell me how it works, he said, stepping closer. Tell me why you saved me, why you trusted me with your son, why you're still here instead of running. I couldn't, because the answer was the same as his. Not the bond, not fate. Him. I hate you, I signed weakly. He smiled, soft, real. No, you don't. I want to. I know. He leaned forward, forehead resting against mine, and for one perfect, impossible moment, the world outside didn't exist. Just us. Just this. Then the door exploded inward. Grayson spun, putting himself between me and the intruders, a growl ripping from his throat. 6 alphas poured into the cabin, eyes glowing, teeth bared. And behind them, slow and deliberate, walked Callum. Last chance, Gray, he said. Step aside. Grayson didn't move. Over my dead body, Callum's expression didn't change. If that's what it takes, he raised his hand, and the alphas attacked. Grayson shifted mid-lunge, meeting the first one head-on. I stumbled back, clutching Eli, mind racing. I could stop them. I could freeze them all again, but I was already running on empty. If I used my power now, I'd collapse, and then Eli would be defenseless. I couldn't risk it. So I ran, down the hallway, into my room, slammed the door, and locked it. It wouldn't hold long, but it was something. I laid Eli on the bed, pulled the blanket over him, and turned back to the door. My hands were shaking. Outside, I heard snarling, crashing, the sound of furniture breaking. Grayson was fighting, alone. For me. No, I couldn't let him do this. I took a breath, then another, and made a choice. I unlocked the door, stepped out into the hallway, and let the power surge, not to fight, to end this. Enough, I commanded, voice silent but mind screaming, and the cabin went still. Every alpha, every threat, frozen, except Callum. He stood in the center of the wreckage, staring at me with something that might have been respect. There you are, he said softly. I met his gaze. If I go with you, I signed, you leave them alone. Grayson, Eli, both of them. No, Grayson snarled from across the room. Don't you dare. I ignored him. Do we have a deal? I signed to Callum. Callum smiled. We do. I was going to save them, even if it meant losing myself. I took a step forward, hands steady, even though everything inside me was screaming to run. Callum watched me approach, expression unreadable. Smart choice, he said. No, Grayson's voice cracked, and I felt rather than saw him trying to break through the mental hold I had on him. Don't do this, please. I couldn't look at him. If I looked at him, I'd break. Let them go first, I signed to Callum. Prove you'll keep your word. Callum's eyes narrowed, but after a moment, he nodded. Release my men. I hesitated, then carefully loosened my grip on the frozen alphas. They stumbled, disoriented, but Callum raised a hand, and they stilled. Outside, he commanded, all of you. They obeyed, filing out one by one, until only Callum, Grayson, and I remained. Now him, Callum said, nodding toward Grayson. I shook my head. Not until I'm sure Eli is safe. He's asleep in the other room. He's perfectly safe. Not good enough. Callum sighed, but there was something in his expression that looked almost like admiration. You really are exactly what they said you were, he murmured. A telepath strong enough to control multiple alphas at once. The council will be very pleased. I don't care about the council. You should. They're the ones who've been protecting you all this time. I froze. What? Callum tilted his head. You didn't think you survived this long on your own, did you? Every time a pack got close, every time hunters tracked your scent, the council redirected them, kept you hidden. My mind reeled. Why? Because you're valuable. Too valuable to let fall into the wrong hands. He paused. Or to let waste away in the woods, raising a pup alone. I was doing fine. You were surviving, Callum said, echoing Grayson's words from earlier. There's a difference. Behind me, I felt Grayson's fury building, pressing against my mental hold like a caged animal. So what happens now? I signed. You take me to the council, and they what? Lock me up? Use me? They help you, Callum said simply. Train you. Teach you to control your power so it doesn't burn you out. Give you and your son a real home. Protection. A pack. It sounded too good to be true, because it was. And in exchange, you use your gift when they need you to. As a weapon, as a resource. Same thing. Callum shrugged. Maybe, but it's better than dying out here, better than running forever. He wasn't wrong, but he wasn't right either. There's another option, a voice said from behind Callum. My head snapped up. Grayson was standing now, and the mental hold I had on him was gone. How? The bond, he said, like he could hear my thoughts. Maybe he could. It goes both ways. Your power, my strength, we balance each other. Callum's expression darkened. Gray, don't. We claim him, Grayson continued, ignoring his brother. Both of us, right here, right now. Make him pack. Make him ours. Then the council can't touch him. My breath caught. Both of you, I signed, looking between them. Twin alphas share everything, Grayson said, including mates. If we both mark you, you're protected under pack law. The council can't take you without starting a war. Callum's jaw tightened. You'd really go against the council? For him? Yes. They'll exile you. I don't care. You'll lose everything. I already have everything I need, Grayson said, eyes locked on mine. Right here. Something in my chest cracked wide open. Callum stared at his brother for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he laughed. You're an idiot, he said, but there was no heat in it. Probably, Grayson agreed. Callum turned to me, and for the first time, I saw something other than coldness in his eyes. Resignation. And maybe, just maybe, a hint of warmth. For the record, he said, I didn't want to do this. Taking you by force, I mean. But the council doesn't give me much choice. You always have a choice, I signed. His lips quirked. Yeah, I guess I do. He looked at Grayson. If we do this, we're both traitors. I know. We can never go back. Good. Callum exhaled slowly, then nodded. All right, let's claim our mate. The words sent a shiver down my spine. Our mate. Not just Grayson's. Ours. Wait, I signed quickly. I need to check on Eli first. Grayson nodded. Of course. I ran to the bedroom, heart hammering. Eli was still asleep, completely undisturbed by the chaos. I brushed his hair back gently, pressed a kiss to his forehead. I'm sorry, baby, I signed, even though he couldn't see. But I think we're about to have a family, a real one. When I came back out, both alphas were waiting. Grayson looked nervous, hopeful. Callum looked resigned, but not unhappy. Are you sure about this? I signed to both of them. Yes, Grayson said immediately. Callum hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I am. I took a breath. Okay, Then let's do this. They moved together, flanking me on either side. Grayson's hand found mine, warm and steady. Callum's touch was cooler, more cautious, but just as solid. This is going to hurt, Grayson warned softly. I know. And once it's done, there's no going back. I know that too, he smiled. Then welcome to the pack. They both leaned in at once. Grayson's mouth found the left side of my neck. Callum took the right. And when their teeth pierced my skin, the world exploded into light. Not pain, connection. I felt them. Both of them. Their thoughts, their emotions, their souls intertwining with mine, until I couldn't tell where I ended and they began. It was overwhelming, terrifying, perfect. When they finally pulled back, I was gasping, legs shaking, but held upright by their hands. Hey, Grayson said softly, cupping my face. You okay? I nodded, then signed with trembling hands. Yeah, I think I am. Callum's hand rested on my shoulder, grounding. Welcome home, he said quietly, and for the first time in 2 years, I believed it. This was home. Not the cabin, not the woods, them. From the bedroom, I heard a small voice. Mama? I turned to see Eli standing in the doorway, rubbing his eyes, looking confused and sleepy and absolutely precious. Grayson crouched down to his level. Hey, buddy, remember me? Eli nodded, then looked at Callum. 2 doggies now? Callum's lips twitched. Yeah, kid, 2 doggies. Eli's face lit up. Cool. And just like that, everything fell into place. We weren't perfect, we weren't normal, but we were ours. A mute omega, twin alpha kings, and a 3-year-old who thought his new pack were just really big dogs. It was messy and complicated and absolutely insane, but it was also everything I never knew I needed. So, I signed to my mates. What happens now? Grayson grinned. Now, we figure it out. Together. Callum nodded. Together. I looked at Eli, then at them, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Together, I signed back. And meant it. They said Omegas like me didn't get happy endings. Turns out, I just needed the right alphas to prove them wrong. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Hit subscribe. The next story drops soon.